So let me ask you this question. How many of you like the show Dateline or 2020, those kind of shows, those investigative journalist kind of shows? Kim loves those kinds of shows. She loves them. She watches them all the time. And one thing that you'll see maybe every once in a while is you'll see an episode about a person who's living a double life, right? Where they have this beautiful family, everything's just great, everything's wonderful, but little do they know that they have a different family on the other side of the country or in a different city in their state, or they're just living a totally separate life, two different kinds of lives. Well, I want to shock you maybe and tell you that we are all living a double life in one way or another. We live really two lives. We have an outer life and an inner life. The outer life is what we do for a living. It's what we look like, our appearance. It's our hobbies and interests. It's the places that we go. It's the people that we surround ourselves with. That's our life. Our reputation is our outer life. Our appearance, again, is part of our outer life. But there is also, at the same time, an inner life inside each and every one of us in the room. And that really is more about motivation. Why I do what I do. Why I surround myself with the people that I surround myself with. And sometimes it's even, so really a good description of this inner life is it's beyond the outer life. Or it's more real than the outer life. And so in this series that we're going to start today, it's called The Real You. And in this series, we're going to look at this inner life, which really you could define with this word, the soul. We're going to spend the next 5 weeks looking at the soul. Today, we're going to look at what is it, where is it, and then in the following, next week, we'll look at more about how our condition of our soul is and why maybe we are in the condition that we are. And then the 3 weeks following, we'll look at how we can take care of our soul and why that's important. How we can take care of the inner you, the real you. That's where we're going to go. So today, again, we're going to answer this main question today. And if you don't like questions, you're going to hate this sermon today because I'm going to ask a lot of questions that are just sort of reflective, try to answer this main question. What is the soul? How do you define it? It's kind of like this. Supreme Court Justice Potter Stewart, in a Supreme Court case years ago about pornography, when he defined obscenity, he said, well, I don't really know how to define it, but I know it when I see it. The soul is sort of like that. Defining the soul is sort of like trying to nail Jell-O to the wall. You kind of get a grip on it. You kind of understand the definition. You kind of understand the importance. You kind of get into a groove, but then you feel like, well, maybe it's this. Or maybe this part of the soul is more important. Or maybe there's a different way or a better way to talk about soul health. So it's a bit tricky, but we're going to look at a few questions and explore this idea of what is the soul. So let me ask, is the soul related to food? Soul food, right? Is it? Is it related to music? Like Aretha Franklin's the queen of soul. What does that even mean? I know it's soul music. What does that have to do with the soul? Is that what it is? Let me ask this question. What is a soul worth? I looked it up online. You can get a brand new 2020 Kia Soul for $17,490. So there's a good starting point. You can maybe bargain and see if they'll bargain with you. It has cruise control, power locks, and windows. I mean, it's, base price, $17,490. That's pretty good. How much is a soul worth? There you go. Can you put a price on a soul? There have been people historically in the last 20 years or so who have actually attempted to sell their soul on eBay. And this became such an issue that eBay, around the year 2000, actually started a policy about selling your soul. And I want to read it to you. This is from a Business Insider article from 2012 citing this policy. It says this, quote, eBay does not allow the auctioning of human souls for the following reasons. If the soul does not exist, eBay could not allow the auctioning of the soul because there'd be nothing to sell. However, if the soul does exist, then in accordance with eBay's policy on human parts and remains, we would not allow the auctioning of human souls. So if you had plans to try to make a quick buck on eBay, you got to find a different route other than selling your soul. And this idea, it's maybe older than this, but one of the most famous versions of this is from a German poem called Faust, where the main character, he's attempting at the beginning of this epic poem, he's trying to figure out all the information in the world. He's reading every book, he's trying to memorize every fact, he's trying to gain all knowledge. And he is despondent because he's not able to do that. Imagine that, a human not being able to have all the information in the world. He just needed Google, right? And he'd be fine. So he's despondent. So then this character, his name is Mephistopheles. He's the devil. That's his name in the story. He comes to him and he says, hey, I can grant you all this knowledge that you're seeking. And Faust is like, that's great. But Mephistopheles says, but it's not for free. Knowledge, it's going to cost you. He's like, what is it going to cost me? He says, it's going to cost you your soul. So in exchange for all the worldly knowledge, he trades or sells his soul to the devil. What is a soul worth? Can you put a price on it? Can you really sell it to the devil? I don't know. That's a different sermon for a different day. Then there's phrases regarding the soul that sometimes we say quite often, or we have at least heard quite a bit. One of them is sports related. You look at maybe after the big game and there's a win, they're interviewing one of the players and they say, what do you think about your teammate over here? Man, he's the heart and soul of our team. You ever heard that before? So like for the Royals, you might say Whit Merrifield, he's the heart and soul of the team right now. It's too bad that they're garbage and he's got to be the heart and soul of a garbage team. But nonetheless, he's awesome, and I love him for being the heart and soul of a terrible team right now. He's one of the few bright spots right now. Or you'd look at the Chiefs and say Patrick Mahomes is the heart and soul of the team. Or maybe Travis Kelce's the heart and soul of the team. What does that actually mean? What do they mean when they say that? And I'll just be honest with you, as we get into the definition of the soul, that might be closer than you think to a real definition of what the soul really is, that someone is the heart and soul of a team. Another phrase that we have heard probably quite a bit is that the eyes are the window to the soul, right? You've heard that before? There's actually been a couple of studies done to try to see if there's anything to that. One of them was, it showed that actually when you're doing hard mental work, your pupils will dilate, which I say maybe makes that phrase sort of kind of accurate. And even one of the studies cited that the proctor of the test, the students were doing a hard math subject thing. I can't even think about math because it just makes me sick. Anyway, they're doing math, really difficult math problems, and so the people doing the test are kind of watching their eyes, and so they can tell when they're really engaged, their pupils will dilate, and then when they give up or they quit or it's over, they go back to normal. And so sometimes every once in a while, the proctor would say, why did you give up back there 3 minutes ago? And they'd say, how did you know that? And they'd say, because your pupils went back. So it's interesting to consider that. Also, there's another study that shows that when we look at pictures of nature, our pupils dilate. Maybe that says something about our souls or the nature of our souls or what that really means. I don't know if you're a poker fan or not, or if you watch poker on TV, but a lot of poker players, they will wear sunglasses so they don't give it away if they have something here. So if someone's watching, I know that study about the pupil thing, I'm going to look, and so they have these glasses on. Or if they're like me, they'll be like, oh my goodness, I have all of these. Oh, sorry. That's what I would do if I played poker, which is why I don't. So there you go. But what does that say? What the eyes are the windows of our soul. What does that mean? What does that say about our souls? Then there's the idea of soulmates. Is there that one person in the universe that is for everyone? There's like one match, and that's your soulmate. How do you know if you found them? What does that mean? The ancient Greek philosopher Aristophanes, he said it this way. His belief was, well, humans were originally born with 4 arms, 4 legs, and 1 head with 2 faces. And Zeus got so upset that they were going to overpower him that he cut them in half. And then they are now cursed to travel on earth to find their soulmate. That's how he basically defined love. It's so attractive the way he explained that. I just love that. But they're searching for their other half, or as the men would say, their better half, right? There you go. Or Jerry Maguire said it famously, you complete me. That's how he said that. So soulmates, we don't call them body mates, do we? We don't do that. We call them soulmates. We don't call them mind mates. We call them soulmates. And then there's the issue of what about your soul before you're alive and after you're dead? What do we do about that? St. Augustine, who was an early church father in the 4th century, he had this theory that it's possible that somewhere up in heaven there's sort of this soul room. And then whenever someone is then birthed, that soul then gets transported to them. I don't know, maybe not. I don't know. It's interesting to think about. And then sometimes at funerals, we'll say, God rest his soul. Well, what is that? What does that mean? What does that say about the soul? When we die, do we float up in the air like in the cartoons, when Daffy Duck gets hit on the head and he's dead, and then his little winged, usually like gray translucent self flies up with wings and a harp. Is that what the soul is? Is it like a little winged version of ourselves with a harp? Is that what that's like? There's a couple of they both claim to be Christian views of the soul and the afterlife, and I would say only one of them is. The first one is what we would call annihilationism, which is really the idea of in the afterlife, if you go up, your soul lives on forever in eternity, but if you go down, your soul is destroyed. So they would see the view of hell, annihilationism, as, well, if the soul lives on, that's great, but if the soul dies, it's dead, it doesn't suffer eternally, which is the traditional, historical Christian view of the afterlife or the soul. No matter where you go, the soul lives on forever, either in eternal bliss or in eternal torment. But there's a lot of questions about the soul that we don't know, and maybe even can't know. And another question that we're going to focus on here then, sort of in the same vein, is where is the soul? Where is it? Is it part of your muscular system? Like, is it part of your brain that we haven't mapped out yet? Is it like a piece of your heart that's way deep down that nobody's been able to, oh, look, that little thing right there. That's the soul. Don't touch it. You'll mess it up. Like, I don't know. What about a heart transplant? If that happens, you have somebody else's soul. Like, I don't know. Is it a gene? Is the soul a gene that's somewhere in your DNA? Is that where it is? And so to kind of explore this part of it and get a better view of what the soul is and why it's important, I have sort of this diagram of these circles here. And I will say, as we focus on this diagram to kind of get a view of what the soul really is and how it's a unique part of everyone, I will say this: I don't want to major on a minor here. There are possibly multiple ways to map this out, and they would all be fine. This is the way that it seems easiest to kind of explain the soul. So you could put the soul in the middle and put the will somewhere else. That's fine, and it will make more sense in a minute. But there is a reason I put it this way, so hopefully, again, we can agree to disagree on some of the placement here, but the idea should still, though, be the same. So I want to look at these 4 levels of, this is you, basically. And so we're going to look at these 4 levels and see how they are different from one another and why the soul is not necessarily one of these other 3 and why that's important. First, we have the will. The will is what I would call our driving force. Or you could maybe even say it's sort of our animal nature, okay? And in some ways, though, it is kind of close to describing the soul. There is some overlap in some of these areas, even some of these explanations, and that's just, again, we're nailing Jell-O to the wall here. So if there's a bit of overlap, if there's still a bit of we're not quite sure, that's just part of the process. That's how God designed really everything, is that we can't know everything, unless you try to sell your soul to the devil, and then, good luck with that. But the will is really our capacity to choose, to say yes or no. It's what I want to do. You might even call it your heart or your gut. And really, a lot of ancient cultures, including in the Old Testament, you'll read this, when they talk about your will, sometimes they'll talk about your heart, sometimes they'll refer to the bowels. So that sounds gross, but another way to think of that is, like go with your gut. You ever heard that phrase before? That's kind of your will. That's sort of the part of you that sort of makes decisions initially from the word go. And again, go with your gut, follow your heart. Those make cute coffee mugs, but it's pretty terrible advice. Okay? Here's why. Jeremiah 17:9 says this: the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately sick. Who can understand it? So the same force, the human will, has the ability to both create and destroy. It's the same force, but depending upon who's exercising their will, it can make amazing art or it can lead to genocide. It's the will. It's what I want to do. It's my desires, what's inside of me. And our will is very limited. It's extremely limited. It can be overridden, can it? Husbands, you know this, right? Your will is overridden all the time on a regular basis. I want that color, but she says we're getting this color, so guess which color we're getting. So that's just, your will can be overridden. Sometimes you can override your own will. So it's very limited. The will is usually good at making simple decisions, sometimes even large decisions, especially if there are not a lot of options here. But the will is very bad at overriding habits. Willpower, very limited. So our will has limitations, so there needs to be something else that should be the real driving force behind who we are. It can't just be the will alone. Then we get to the mind, the second little try to layer of who we are, the mind, which is how I would describe our thoughts and feelings, or you could describe someone's consciousness. And really, this is the next step after the will. So you have a desire, but then it goes up here and you think about it. You consider the outcomes or the options, or you don't, and you let your will run wild and ruin your life. That's kind of why the mind is an important component of who you are. But the mind is also limited. It's tricky because your mind is very fickle. How do I know that? Because I know a question is going to be asked quite a bit from some of us in the room in about half an hour. Where do you want to go have lunch? Right? You will see the limited nature of making up your mind. Well, I want to go here. No, let's go there. Well, we already drove that way to go. Now I want to go there. Now, our mind is limited. It changes all the time. We can't make it up. The mind is weak. It can be overpowered, just like the will. And it's interesting, Jesus, when he has interactions with people who are considered demon-possessed, they would be considered out of their mind, right? And yet, when you look at his interactions with them, he's able to still communicate with them. Well, how is he communicating with someone that's out of their mind? It has to be that he's communicating on a different level with those people specifically, and that it's possible he can communicate with everyone on a different level, on a deeper level. So it seems reasonable to say that in these cases where Jesus sees these demon-possessed people, and even with us who are in our right mind, at least most of the time, right? That's speaking for myself there, is that there's got to be a deeper level of communication that's possible other than just the mind. It's reasonable to believe that he communicates on a soul level. What about people in a coma or who are brain dead? Do they lack the same value as someone who is completely healthy? No. So value and personhood can't just be in or from the mind. What about people who have mental deficiencies? Are they less a person than others? No, they have the same human value as anyone else. So it can't be defined by just simply the mind. And I will make this disclaimer very quickly. We are not going to get into a discussion about mental illness when we talk about the mind. This is simply about our reasoning capabilities to a certain level. Because here's the thing. Just like anyone and everyone, even a Christian, can get sick physically, they can also get sick mentally. I know that's somewhat of a stigma, it's kind of turning a corner a bit in Christian circles to be more accepted, but it's still kind of a tough thing to get your foot in the door on that argument. But it's true. Everything from the fall in Genesis 3, from the curse of sin, everything was affected, including the human mind. And so it's possible for a strong Christian who has a healthy soul to still suffer from certain mental issues like anxiety disorders, or even clinical depression. It's possible that both of those can be true at the same time, okay? So now that's not always seen that way, but it is true. Our mind is not what gives us ultimate value. Our mind is not what should be the driving force of our lives, and that's really one reason why. One more thing about the mind, and then we'll move on to the other the body here, is this word psychology. We hear about it a lot, it's the study of the mind. Well, that's not what that word means. So psychology, the root word is psyche, which is Greek for soul. So honestly, psychology should be classified as the study of the soul, which it's not. That is not why you go to see a psychiatrist. How's my soul, doc? And no, they're talking about your mind, your mental capacity, your mental health. But really, in reality, what it should be looking at is soul health. All these books and books and books and rows of books in bookstores that are self-help books, honestly, they'd be much more helpful if they were called soul help books. If I focused as much attention on my soul health as my mental health, that would be amazing. If I focused as much on God's will through my soul as my own will, that would be amazing, but we don't always do that because, again, the soul is just kind of this weird thing that we can't understand. And then we have the body, which is the easiest one to get through, so I'm not going to spend much time on this one at all. The body is the easiest to differentiate from the soul. The body is simply your vehicle. It's the mechanism by which your will is exercised and your mind is then expressed. So it's hard, if not impossible, to exercise your will if you didn't have a body, right? I would want to do this, but how am I going to do that? I don't have a body to do that. It's going to be nearly impossible to express what's inside of you if you can't express it outwardly. There are ways to do that, but it's difficult. And if we didn't have a body at all, it would be pretty much impossible. And again, just like the will and the mind, the body is very, very much limited, right? Because it ages, it weakens, it breaks down, it gives out, it fails us, right? The ache in my back that I have all the time every morning, that's my body that is failing me. It's limited. And so certainly, as difficult as it is to see that personhood and value and truth can't be seen in our will or our mind, obviously can't be in our body. It can't be through our appearance or our strength or our attributes. It's got to be more than that. It seems very clear that the will, the mind, and the body need direction from something outside of themselves to direct our lives. It has to be something else. And that's where we get to the soul, or what I would call the life glue. Again, you could put the soul in the middle, like the soul is the center of who you are. I wouldn't argue with that. But I put it on the outside for this reason. The soul is kind of the glue that holds the rest of you together. All these other parts of you would be just everywhere, but a healthy soul can kind of hold all these in place. And there's a pastor, an author named Dallas Willard, and he's written a lot of great stuff on this topic, and he writes this in one of his works. He says this: the soul is that aspect of your whole being that correlates, integrates, and enlivens everything going on in the various dimensions of the self. The soul is the life center of human beings. Again, it could be in the center. But again, he says it correlates, integrates, and enlivens everything else going inside the other layers of who you are. It's the real glue that holds together the real you. That's a pretty decent definition of the soul. It's not all, it doesn't explain everything, but it does a good job to some degree. He also goes on to say this in a different work. He says, you are an unceasing spiritual being with an eternal destiny in God's great universe. Your soul is not just something that lives on after your body dies. It's the most important thing about you. It is your life. The soul is the glue that holds everything in your life together. The soul, your soul, is the real you. Your soul is the real you. You are not a body. You are not a self. You are a soul. That is who you are. And so with that sort of working definition going, and we'll flesh it out more in the coming weeks, but I want to give us two what I would call basic soul considerations. With this idea, thinking about what the soul is, let's look at maybe why that's an important thing to maybe try to understand more about, okay? Two soul considerations today, which, again, this is kind of a cliffhanger, so to get more of what we're talking about, you have to keep coming back. I did it on purpose that way. You know, it's like the end of the season on TV shows, so I just took their lead and said, hey, cliffhanger Sunday, baby, here we go. Two basic soul considerations to think about this week. One, we should value every soul. If we've seen, again, it's not just my will, it's not just my mind, it's certainly not my body, but it's something bigger than that. It has that much impact on who I am. It holds me together. That's a big deal. And you mean everyone has one of those? Yes. I don't know where it is or what it looks like or how big it is or how, I don't know, but everyone has one. And so we should value every soul because every soul has value. So try to find value in every soul. And this really is why every ism is evil. The idea that we have, every person has a soul is why racism is so evil. Because my appearance does not make me a person or make me less of a person or more of a person. My physical strength, so we look at, even sexism. Well, because women are weaker, they're this or that, or because men are stronger, they're this or that, or we should give them more of a break or less of a break, or we should, no. All of the isms that you can think of that try to put us in categories are wrong because of the idea of the soul. Every individual has equal value because of their soul. We should value every soul because every soul has value. And so we should find value in that and in nothing else whatsoever. And this is really why God commands his followers to take care of those that are less fortunate than them. He says, take care of orphans and widows in their distress. He said, look out for the alien and the stranger. Why? Because they have the same value that I would have, and if they need something that society would say devalues them, I should try to help to bring that value in the eyes of those around me. We should, again, value every soul because every soul has value. It's not about how much money you have that values you. It's not about how you look or how strong you are, how smart you are, how much will you can impose on others. That's not what defines our value. It's that we have a soul, and every soul matters to God, so every soul should then matter to us. We should value every soul. And then secondly, and this is where we're going to get into really deep next week and the rest of the series, is this: we should care for our soul. So we should value every soul, but I want you to care for your soul. Your soul needs personal attention and regular maintenance, just like your car. Just like you have this issue with your house or whatever, you need to fix that. The soul is exactly the same way. It needs personal attention and regular maintenance. Jesus says it this way, Mark 8:36. He says, "What good is it for someone to gain the whole world yet forfeit their soul?" Again, it's more about value. This is a value question. Because he goes on to say in the next verse, "And what can a man give in exchange for his soul?" So again, we focus personal attention a lot on our will and our mind and our body, but very little on our soul. Maybe because we don't know that there is a difference, and there is. We have to give personal maintenance to not just our will and our mind and our body, but also to our soul, the glue that holds us together. There's a story about this small little group of people that lived up high in the Alps, in the mountains, and there was a beautiful stream that flowed down the side of this mountain right in the middle of this community. And there was an old man who lived right at the top in a little shack, and he had one job. He was hired years and years ago by the city council to care for the stream flowing down the middle of this community. That's all he had to do. So every day he'd get out and he would inspect the stream, and if he saw sticks or twigs or branches, he'd remove them out. He would treat the water regularly, and so for decades the water flowed clean and pure, and there was not a spot in it. And so the community was very healthy, and the kids are very healthy, and they had the best water, and people would even come from miles around just to see the beauty of this stream. Well, enough years passed by, and really a generation that didn't really appreciate this old man who said he didn't answer to anybody, and why are we paying him so much, and he doesn't really have a lot of value, and so they decided we're going to fire him. And so they fired the old man, and so now no one is caring for the stream. And it doesn't take long before the water gets muddy and murky, and then enough twigs and branches, it clogs the flow of the stream, and then no one comes to visit to see the beautiful stream. The kids start getting sick from drinking the water, disease spreads, and it's a nightmare. So then someone finally comes to their senses and says, hey, let's rehire the old man back. If he'll take his job back, we'll give it to him, and he can take care of the stream because we need the stream to be healthy. And so they do. They agree, and he agrees to be rehired. So he goes back up to his little cabin up at the top of the stream, and he takes out the branches, and he treats the water. He cares for the water. He looks after the stream, and before long, the stream is now clean again. It's now healthy again, and those that are drinking the water are now healthy. There's no more sickness. There's no more disease running rampant through this community. So the moral of the story is this: the stream in the story is your soul, and you are the keeper of the stream that is your soul. Now, you're not the owner of it. We'll talk about that next week. You're not the owner of your soul, but you are the keeper of your soul. You are the one that is solely responsible for the health of your soul, for the condition of your soul. The stream is your soul, and you are its keeper. So if your soul is healthy, no external circumstance can destroy your life. So even when your body breaks down, if your soul is healthy, you're going to be okay because that glue is still holding you together just enough. Even if you suffer from mental illness, or you have deficiencies even through sin, or even consequences of your actions, or no matter what comes at you externally, if your soul is healthy, nothing external can destroy your life. But the inverse is also true. If your soul is unhealthy, no external circumstance can then fix your life. So it's not that I've left this, it's the stream story. I've left it undone for so long. I've not looked after it in many years, and now why am I in this place? And why do I feel this way? And why do I lack purpose and direction? And why do I have all these big questions unanswered? How's your soul? Is it healthy or unhealthy? Do you find that you're growing in health in your soul, or you've let it decline? You let your soul decline. One more scripture as we close today is this. 3 John 2 says this: Beloved, I pray that in all respects you may prosper and be in good health, just as your soul prospers. This is what God designed us to be, a healthy soul that then ripple effects into the rest of our lives. Now, again, there are still effects of sin. So Christians will get sick, right? You said it, ripples effect. So I have a healthy soul, so I should never be sick. Is that the magic bullet? Is that the magic pill? No. The curse of sin is still very real, but the soul then, again, as the glue of who you are, can overcome those external things. It can withstand the brunt of life when it comes against you. It can withstand relational issues and physical issues and emotional issues and mental, anything that you have in your life that is a deficiency, your soul, if it's healthy, can overcome that. That's what God wants. That's what he intends. And we'll talk about that again more next week. So here's two kind of action steps I have for us as we close today. Two things as we're kind of learning more about the soul and its importance and its relevance in our lives. Here's two things I want us to do this week. First, take a look outward at others. And as you do that, ask yourself, do I really love others? Do I really value others? Do I value the soul that is in every other person around me? No matter what the exterior is, do I value what's deep down somewhere in there? Do I value the glue of their life enough to still love them despite what they do or say or how they behave? Look outward at others and say, do I value their soul as God does? The second action step then is to look inward at ourselves. Look outward at others and look inward at ourselves and ask yourself, do I think I have a healthy soul? I'm still trying to work on what that means. I'm still trying to grapple with what that looks like. And again, we'll cover more specifically in the series what that is and how we can accomplish that. But then really it comes down to this. Do I feel close and connected to God? Or do I feel distant and disconnected from him? And you could even look back 6 months. Do I feel closer or further? Do I feel more connected or disconnected? A year in the past, from 10 years ago, do I feel like I'm moving in that right direction toward soul health? Or am I declining and I've let the stream, again, get brackish and brown and just nasty and full of disease? So look outwardly to others to value their souls, and then we want to look inwardly at ourselves to take an inventory of our souls. And so I hope that we've gotten a little glimpse today of the importance of the soul, the value of the soul, both our own and others. And that as we continue in this series, we'll get to know even better and better and better more about the real you.